it just kind of speaks to where are at as a culture right now, that we have to like focus on doing nothing and like
Mm-hmm.
relaxing. So one of the, I sort of, the book sort of builds towards, creating some sort of like rules for recovery or like concepts. And I think one of the most important things is just having like a daily ritual or a part of your everyday that's just relaxation and
Mm-hmm.
relaxing. And by that I mean like you're not trying to be productive. In fact, it's productivity is sort of the emphasis of it. It's like you're just sort of being, you're letting your mind
Mm-hmm.
wander, you're letting your muscles, your body relax. But it's almost like these days people almost feel like they have to pencil that in, or not even, people don't even use pencils anymore. It's like their apps or whatever, like they have to
Mm-hmm.
have an alert that tells them, okay, it's time to relax now, and you have exactly 30 minutes to relax. And it's like,
You're
no,
right.
no, no.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre, skincare for athletes. Whether you're in the gym, on the mats, on the road, or in the pool, we protect your skin so you're more comfortable in your own body. To learn more, go to solpre.com.
Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. Today, my guest started her career as a lab researcher. She's the former lead science writer for 538, currently freelancing, so feel free to get in touch with her if you need some quality articles. She has a podcast called Emerging Form. It's on creativity, and I'm sure she might share more with us about it in a minute. But more importantly, today we're talking about her latest book, Good to Go. Welcome to the podcast, Christie Aschwanden. I knew I was going to mess that up, Christie. I'm sorry.
That's pretty good, actually. So in Switzerland, it's a Swiss name. They say Aschwanden or Aschwanden. And I used to say it Aschwanden, but I've sort of defaulted to saying Aschwanden, because when I
Yeah.
say Asch, then people think it's spelled with an O and they really screw up the spelling. But if I just say Ash, everyone gets it pretty close. So
Like I told you before we got started, it's this like half German thing in my head when I go Aschwanden, like with that V sound, and
yeah.
I asked you and I couldn't get it corrected. I'll have to like in the future I'll have to ask guests and then be like, all right, let me say this 3 times and then
I feel like sometimes like trying to get it right actually makes it worse.
yeah.
I was on my book tour. I was on stage with a friend of mine. We were doing a Q&A, and he's great. And I asked him right before, like, I want to be sure I'm saying your last name correctly. And he told me, and then I got up there and said it completely wrong. And he was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny, like so my last name is Funk. It's 4 letters. It's a
That is a
relatively
great
common.
name.
It's a
Should I
relatively
marry you so I
common
can get
word.
that?
But like I've had like the most egregious I think was I had Funic, and I went what? Like I didn't know what to do with. This was like I was like a teenager at the time, and I was like I don't even know what to do with that right now.
That's
Um,
funny.
but as you
That
said,
name.
we're kind of short on time today as
Yep.
you're a busy person. So I kind of want to jump right in and ask you, um, why even take an assignment talking about recovery? I mean, you do a lot of things, so I mean, why take this assignment at all?
Yeah, that is such a great question, and it has a kind of a long. I'll give you the long answer. Actually,
Okay.
I'll give you the short version of the long answer.
Okay.
Uh, the short long answer is that I was an elite athlete for many years, and recovery is sort of the thing that I never managed to get right. And it's something that I think all of us athletes know, that it is really important, but it's something that's easy to neglect. And looking back on my career now that it's over, I realize that that was sort of the thing that limited, me reaching my peak potential or whatever,
Mhm.
was just that I was pretty much constantly overtraining. I was neglecting to, really focus on recovery. I sort of gave recovery short shrift. And I think that that's pretty common among athletes, especially,
Mhm.
endurance athletes like myself, who tend to be really driven and sort of have this idea that more is better, even if you sort of intellectually know that it's not. The sort of, so
Mhm.
often the response to like things not going well is to just work harder. And like, I can see
Right,
now that
right. Well,
that
we know
doesn't
how to work
work.
hard.
Right. Right. Yeah.
How do you know that you're recovering hard? Like
Right.
recovering
Right.
effectively, right?
Exactly. So there's that aspect, but then the other aspect is like basically. So I was like, serious athlete in the in the 90s and the 2000s. And like back then, like we didn't have, like there's so much stuff that has just sprung up since then. And I still do sports. I'm just totally recreational, not really competing. Although I did just take up cyclocross, and I just realized that, oh crap, it's time to start training. I have my first race in a few weeks, which is super fun. But anyway, in that time, there's been sort of this proliferation of new products and services that are targeted at athletes that are all about recovery. And so I say in the book that, back in my day, see, this makes me seem really old, which I guess I am now. But back in my day, recovery was a noun. It was the state of being that you tried to achieve by like putting your feet up and resting and sleeping. And like, basically you weren't doing anything. That the whole point of recovery was to do nothing. But now recovery has become a verb. It's something that you do. And like I kept hearing, in the course of reporting my book, I kept talking to pro athletes and serious athletes who were saying, "Oh, I got to go do my recovery now." And I'm thinking, "Go do your recovery." Like that just seemed like ridiculous to me. But I started to realize that that's where we're at now, and recovery has become something that people really do with as much sort of energy and vigor as they do their training, which, on the one hand, it's great that there's kind of a wide-standing recognition of the importance of recovery. But on the other end of that is sort of like, I also know, I'm a science journalist by training. I used to be an experimentalist, like I'm sort of a science geek, a data geek. And like the other thing that I noticed is that a lot of this stuff, didn't seem very scientific to me. And so I was really interested in sort of like interrogating the science, looking at what the stuff was all about. And really, I wanted to figure out what works. I was pretty sure that some of this new stuff must be pretty amazing if it had become so popular.
Yeah. Well, I think you touch on it in the book where it's like we kind of talked about, how to work hard. So it's like, you need to recover. It's easier to like, let's do something to recover versus
let's do it.
Do nothing, I think you touch on that somewhere. I can't remember what chapter that is. You touch on that.
I think it just kind of speaks to where we are at as a culture right now, that we have to like focus on doing nothing and like relaxing. So one of the, the book sort of builds towards, creating some sort of like rules for recovery or like concepts. And I think one of the most important things is just having like a daily ritual or a part of your everyday that's just relaxation and relaxing. And by that I mean like you're not trying to be productive. In fact, productivity is sort of the emphasis of it. It's like you're just sort of you're letting your mind wander, you're letting your muscles, your body relax. But it's almost like these days people almost feel like they have to pencil that in, or not even, people don't even use pencils anymore. It's like their apps or whatever, like they have to have an alert that tells them, okay, it's time to relax now, and you have exactly 30 minutes to relax. And it's like, no.
Yeah, I fall into that a little bit where it's like, so I bought an old house. It was built in the 1930s and it needs a lot of work. So my mind is constantly churning all the time. New ad ideas. I need to get new guests. So I need to prep for an interview. Whatever it is, I need to like always going. And my almost like penciled in recovery, quote unquote, to get my mind to shut down is like, all right, I need to go sand some paint off a door, and I can just like be, instead of letting my mind. So it gives my mind a break. But it is like scheduled time. Like I'm gonna go do this for an hour. It's still that like weird prescribed time that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's like it's like people feel like they need permission, and it's been really interesting. One of the most common responses that I've gotten to the book, I've gotten so many letters about this, is people just telling me, "Oh my God, thank you! Like you gave me permission to like take time off to just relax, and you gave me permission to stop being so anxious and to stop worrying about there's a lot of things in the book that I sort of identify as being not worth your time." And I kind of expected that people were going to be mad at me for debunking some of their favorite things. And in fact, it's been sort of the opposite. People are like, "Oh, thank God I don't have to go in the ice bath anymore.
Do that anymore."
I always hated that. And it's like, yeah, and you don't actually need to do it. And so people have actually been really happy about that.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that, because it seems like as I went through it, it seems like the vast majority of chapters you're like, no, it didn't really have a whole lot of efficacy here. Like maybe like in regards to icing, I think you talk about for short-term recovery, say like you've got multiple races a day or something, then there might be some efficacious use of ice between, but it inhibits long-term recovery.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, maybe it has some limited use, but it's not a cure-all for, whatever we want it to do.
Yeah, I mean, the secret is there is no secret, right? It's like all the stuff that and people really, I mean, we're just so eager. We're sort of living in this time too, where we have such a belief in technology, which I think is cool, but it's also sort of this idea that like there's this perfect version of ourselves. It's just like one techno fix away. And if only, we get the right app or the right product or whatever, that everything will be perfect. Or even, it's the idea of the one weird trick. Like it doesn't even necessarily
Right.
have to be the product, but it's like, okay, do this, whether it's the ice bath or whatever. And so I guess one of the messages from my book, like, no, actually you don't, like, let go of that stuff. Like if you actually just focus on the basics, the stuff that you sort of already know to be doing, like that's where you get the biggest payoffs. And in fact, I think one of the biggest payoffs actually comes from like making a conscious decision to not stress about this other stuff and to not try to micromanage and to sort of stop seeking these like tiny little gains where the sort of effort to attain them sort of erases whatever benefit you're going to get, because now all of a sudden, instead of finishing your workout, now you're spending another half hour doing all these like things that aren't going to benefit you, or if they do, it's such a small amount that maybe that half hour would have been better off spent actually relaxing. Because I think if your recovery rituals are not relaxing, then they're not working. But on the other hand, I identify a lot of modalities that actually don't have, there may be these scientific claims that are made for them that didn't hold up. But at the same time, if they help someone relax, like that's actually recovery. Recovery is relaxing.
Right.
It's helping your body regenerate, recuperate. And so anything that you can do that makes you feel good and makes you feel relaxed and sort of helps you reduce stress and feel at ease, like that's really great. And so you don't need some like pseudo-scientific explanation about infrared rays or, lactic acid flushing or whatever. Like massage feels really, really great.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of like really good physiological explanations for like how it helps, but it helps, I think, by making people feel really good. It helps by forcing people to lie down and relax for a while. It helps by, forcing people to put their legs up and really just sort of focus on their body for a bit.